How do you
Mhm.
make that transition or how that connection between acting and comics? Where does that come into play into your life? I'm really curious about that.
Well, so, I love them both. I love them both pretty much equally, although I think I like acting like 10% more only because for me, acting is collaborative and it's social, and as we know, to get comics done, it's a lot of time sitting by yourself,
Yep.
because I write and draw most of my own stuff, but I'll occasionally illustrate other people's stories if I like the story and if I trust the person, um,
Hmm.
but illustration is and writing is so solitary.
Yeah.
Um, However, having said that, the thrill of creative work is the same in both. Um, and I'm also a singer, so I've made music and I've done singing projects with bands and with friends. I think for me, it's like the creative high, the creative thrill of all of them has a common like vibrational wavelength of the
Yeah.
joy of creativity and the joy of making something artistic, whether it's art, art with a capital A, but whether it's art like drawings, comic book pages, or
Oh man,
whether
that's
it's
gorgeous.
a movie or a book or a song with friends. For me, uh, I when I was a teenager, I really was dead set on being an illustrator full time. When I was a
Yeah.
kid, I was pretty I was that 12-year-old who was like, "I'm gonna be a Marvel artist. I'm gonna be a DC artist." I would read countless interviews as a teenager with, the big illustrators, the big writers, the editors.
Hmm.
Um, I even went to somehow I got, like, an interview at DC for an internship when I was, like,
Cool.
18 or 17, and this would have been in the late '80s, early '90s, and I think it was a guy named Bob Greenberger who was an editor in charge of their paperbacks. He was like a paperback collections editor, and for
Yeah.
whatever reason, I got in front of him. I don't know how. I was lucky enough to do that, and I had been as a teenager, I had a 150-page comic that
Oh
I did.
wow.
I wrote and drew and lettered all by hand on paper from
Yeah.
7th grade to first year of college. I churned out
Man.
150 pages. Um, and it was a superhero. It was okay. I mean, it was adequate for a teenager. It was good for a
Yeah.
teenager, but you know, and it was very much a result of all the comics, the stew of all '70s and '80s comics that I was obsessed with. Um, and the editor at DC said, the classic like, you're pretty good, kid, but you need more time in the oven. Like, get back to
Yeah.
us when your technique is a little better, when you've got some more years under your belt. And he was absolutely right. And for me, I I got more and more serious about acting because again, I love acting and I love all that stuff. It's just more social. And I'm a weird
Yeah.
like a lot of like a I mean, you may be like this as well. Would you say you're more of an introvert, extrovert, or a mixture of both?
Oh, it's a total mixture of both. I mean,
Yeah.
I need my quiet alone time for sure, you know what I mean, where I could
Yes.
focus on stuff, but I'm like we met and we just clicked because we could both just talk and we were just on it and
Yes.
just talking and introducing to new people and networking, and that's the way I
Yes.
function very
Yes.
highly in any job or atmosphere. And then I could turn around and be like, "Well, I got to go draw this or write this for the next 3 hours." So got to do that.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's a little bit harder, but I do love that time. And once I get
Yes.
sucked into it, I'm vibing, I'm there, I'm more than happy. But if I'm at a convention, I'm also just ecstatic. I'm never like, dreading any of those type of interactions. I love
Yeah.
going up to each person and seeing what happens.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, so I also, similar to you, like you, I'm a mix. I'm an introvert and extrovert. Although they do
Hmm.
say what the INFP or INFJ, whatever, like
Yeah, something
they
like that.
say it's what replenishes you that's the main thing. And I have to
Hmm.
say, usually what replenishes me if I'm fatigued what replenishes me is the alone time or the quiet
Yeah.
time. Um,
Yeah.
but comics, the networking is social, but the execution of comics has to be focused, probably
Hmm.
pretty solitary. Um, I have, we all have friends and relatives who don't understand anything about comics, right? They're like
100%. Yeah.
those people that say, "Gosh, they still make comics," like
Right. Yeah. 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 Exactly.
people who are like, "How I thought computers." Did those now. Um, and what I tell those people to give them a frame of reference, I'm like, Stephen King has written God knows how many books. And
Hmm.
if you read interviews with writers, with novelists, they have to go into like a cabin in the woods for 3 months to get it
Yep.
done. Or they have to
Yep.
go in the office in the other section of the house to get it done. Um,
Hmm.
as a result, by the way, it's kind of funny. I haven't had time to focus and draw in like 3 months. I owe someone a pinup for Relic Hunter, that book by Adam Lemna, who you've talked to him, I think, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Great dude. Yeah. We
Cosmic
got to get him on
Lion.
the show at some point.
Oh, he's terrific. He's the nice, and also he's both film and acting, and he's both film and writing and illustrating comics because
Hmm.
he's a professional film editor in Hollywood.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
And he's also directed. He's a great guy, very multi-talented. So I started this. This is so the issue 2 of Relic Hunter, by the way, which is a Cosmic
Mhm.
Lion book as well. Issue 1 was kind of a Conan the Barbarian riff.
Mhm.
And then issue 2, they do that thing that I think Marvel did in the 80s where there's a time travel and they plop him in Manhattan in the late
There you go. Yep.
70s.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I had the idea of doing like an Escape from New York movie poster sort of like riff.
That's
And
so
like
cool.
the old Escape from New York kind of logo.
Yeah.
Um, so this will be, the barbarian kind of a thing.
Love
Anyway,
it.
so this has been on my drawing table. I probably started it 4 months ago, and there was the holidays, there was Christmas and New Year's. Then I got an
Mhm.
acting job that took over my life for a month and a half. And then I still have a day job like some of us do.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
and then there was IC3, and then there was Mocha. And then, funnily, I've actually been asked to help out on 2 documentaries recently, one of
I've
which
seen
is
that.
about comic books, and
Ooh.
the other documentary is about a famous band from the 80s that a friend of mine became buddies with the band. So it's sort of like a niche band, almost like if you, it's almost like the Flaming Lips, that
Oh,
kind of
nice.
like niche, or the
Yeah,
Dead Milk
exactly.
or the Dead Milkmen from the 80s. Like
Oh my
it's
gosh.
that
Yes,
level
there
of
you
like.
go. Yeah.
So anyway, I haven't had time. I have other comics I've been working on, but I did actually. Someone who's not. He's Eli. Eli Schwab is, of course, the Cosmic Lion,
Yeah.
publisher. This
Mhm.
guy is Eli Schwab adjacent. He's
Oh, wow.
his name is Brandon. I don't. Is Brandon his same name as yours?
There you go.
He's done series called Thready. He's doing a Love and Rockets tribute book.
Oh, how cool.
And it's like 30 or 40 illustrators. All what they're doing is it's very similar to Batman Year One, that Batman Year One parody that they did,
Yeah.
or the
Mhm.
Weapon X tribute that was called Weapon X.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
There you go.
so I have here, this is everyone's redrawing a page from Love and Rockets #1, the very first Love and Rockets, which was like a zine almost, if you see
Yeah,
the
pretty
original
much.
Love and Rockets. So I wanted to draw the page where Maggie is like repairing
Nice.
it's repair
That's
woman,
so
repair
great.
person Maggie, and they're driving in
Yeah.
the space car, the hovercraft car or whatever.
That's
Um,
so cool. Dude, yeah, that Maggie the
so
Mechanic, like, whole series, it's just so much fun. That's so cool. You get to,
yeah.
like, even recreate that and bring it to life. It looks fantastic too.
Oh, thank you. So this is a long story. This is a circuitous answer to your question. as far as acting and comics, the other thing, of course, comics are filmic. They are
Yeah.
storyboards, right? They're
Hmm.
comics is about camera angles
Hmm.
and pacing and storytelling. So I think almost everyone who makes comics, most of them are usually at least movie or film fans,
Hmm.
because in order to execute the illustration of a comic book page, you've got to think in camera angles,
Yep. Yeah.
you know.
Exactly.
Um, and so for me, my dream goal, and I'm going to put this out here, and so far it's creeping closer to manifesting in reality. You know, you look at certain actors, right? You look at actors. They're successful actors, whether they're hugely famous or not. You need to be just enough to keep making money to get, you know, at the very least, you just don't want to have a day job anymore. You just want to be an actor, you know.
Hmm.
And a lot of these actors, they're making films or TV 8 months out of the year, or 7 months out of the year, or 10 months out of the year. And then on the other months, they're writing a novel or they're painting. And for
Hmm.
me, also, do you know who Jeffrey Lewis is? He makes comics and he has a successful band.
Oh, I don't
Jeffrey
recall.
Lewis.
I'll look into him. That doesn't sound,
Look
not
up
off the
a
top of my
guy
head for
named
sure.
Jeffrey Lewis. He is an indie, kind of a niche indie comics guy.
Hmm.
Um, and he has a successful indie band called, I think
That's
it's called the
rad.
Jeffrey Lewis Band. And
Oh,
he
rad.
does a comic that's like part autobio, part fantasy called Fuff, F
Oh,
U
wow,
F
that's
F.
interesting. That
The
sounds real
guy's
familiar.
amazing. And I don't think he's like wealthy, but his whole year is either touring with the band, making albums, or writing and drawing his own comics.
That's rad.
And not a lot of people know about him, but he's a terrific guy. And by the way, one of his songs, uh, like he made a song that became like almost a viral hit, and then a big deal filmmaker wanted to like expand on it or make a movie out of the song. It might have been Michel Gondry from back in the
Oh,
early 2000s.
that's
Uh,
cool.
anyway, he's a fast look up Jeffrey Lewis. It's spelled just like Jeffrey and just like Lewis,
Right.
Lewis, as opposed to
Oh, rad.
LU. But I have always thought, like Ethan Hawke, he makes a lot of movies and then he writes novels, he writes books of poetry. I was like,
Hmm.
that's my goal. I want to be make. I feel frustrated, Brandon, that I haven't had time to properly sit down and focus on getting back to comics. You know,
Oh, yeah.
and I made these New York Times comics. I made 4 of them. The only reason I haven't done more, or at least pitched more, is that I haven't had time because I have this day job. And I only work 4 days a week. Even with the 4-day a week day job, I really haven't had
It's
that much
rough.
free time.
Bring your comic books to life and print your comics with Comics Will Spread.